forward them the URL that you used today to log in, and they shouldn't have any problems registering. This livecast is actually on YouTube right now live. So you can go to the Brand Innovators YouTube page and you can share that link with all of those same folks that couldn't tune in and register earlier. So the last thing I want to do before I bring on our awesome guest MC today is thank Cisco. Cisco is our official technology partner here at Brand Innovators. They have been powering our live casts for the past couple of months, and we're just so glad that they're a part of our community. So speaking of the community, I'm super excited because today's guest MC is a personal friend and partner of Brand Innovators. His name is Casey Saran. He is the co-founder and CEO of Spaceback, which is the first platform to bridge the gap between social media and paid media. Casey has been a very, very busy man over the past 6 weeks. How you doing, Case?
Hey, Lauren.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. Very excited to be here. Yeah, and it has been a really busy 6 weeks. The Facebook boycott and obviously everything impacted by COVID. Plus now we got a storm going on. It's been crazy, but for me it's just so cool to see the Brand Innovators community thriving and pushing forward with everything going on. So very happy to be here today.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, like I said, and you said, you guys have been really crazy busy at Spaceback. So, extra special thanks for joining us today and taking a couple hours out of your day to host. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited to be here. So yeah, to tell everyone a little bit about who I am, I'm Casey Saran. I am the founder and CEO of a company called Spaceback. And what we do is we convert social media posts and recreate them inside display banner placements. So really as standard ads. And really the history is that we've just seen that brands are creating such amazing content in social, and it's really because the innovation in social and the user experience is pushing forward. We think a lot more quickly than ad experiences. So I've been in the programmatic space for over 10 years and worked a lot as I ran product at a company called Rubicon Project, worked at AdMeld and Google a couple times, and just seeing the technology innovation in ad tech is progressing at a crazy pace. However, the user experience hasn't changed that much throughout my career. The boxes that we're actually putting in front of people at the end of the day are pretty similar to what they were 10 years ago. Even though the pipes have become so much more sophisticated and measurement and targeting capabilities. So when we started Spaceback, we were just looking at this dichotomy of great experiences on social and then kind of afterthoughts in ad spaces, and thinking that there's a big opportunity to recreate the social experiences in ad units. Drives a lot better performance for brands. But I'm especially excited to be here because what we're seeing is that D2C brands are actually really leading the way in terms of content. And we're seeing, we work with a lot of larger brands that have been around for a long time that certainly you would not call a traditional D2C brand, but they're actually making a lot of efforts to look more like D2C. So really the thought leadership and innovation, I think, is happening here with this group and this community. And this is really what even some of the largest brands are looking to when they're thinking about how to engage with users and how they want to manage brand identity and social and across other environments through paid. So without further ado, I'm looking forward to learning a lot from our speakers today too. I'd like to introduce Rob Gregory from Jellysmack and Emily Culp from Cover FX Skincare. And special shout out to Emily too. I'm sure she can share more, but she gets the Trooper of the Year award 100% for she was impacted by the storm and does not have Wi-Fi or power even. So I actually have no clue how Emily was able to make this happen. I'm sure she can tell us, but thank you so much for making it, Emily and Rob. So I'll let you guys take it away. And we may have a little snafu. I don't see Rob or Emily on my screen yet here.
Can you hear us now?
Oh, I can hear you. Great.
Oh, okay. Casey, you can hear me, right? This is Emily.
Yep, I can hear you. How's it going, Emily?
Oh, it was superb. Thank you for the shout out. I will say I look like a crazy person as I drove a few miles away from my house and found a nice little hotspot in front of someone else's house. So yes, if you hear ambient noise, that's what's going on in my life.
That is amazing. Hopefully they don't come out and chase you off their Wi-Fi. But so glad you're able to.
You know what? I'm just going to incorporate them into it. If they're great questions, why not ask for some random person's input as well?
There we go. Yeah, invite them into the community. I like that. Cool. And do we have Gregory as well?
Yes. Hi, Casey. It's Rob. Can you hear me?
Can hear you. Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Great. Well, Rob, I'll let you introduce yourself and Emily, and then segue into the session there.
Terrific. Hi, Emily. Hi again. How are you?
So good.
So let's jump right in. I'm Rob Gregory. I am President of Sales and Marketing of Jellysmack, and today's session is brought to you by Jellysmack. And here's our 2-minute public service announcement. A Jellysmack is a school of jellyfish. So the name of our company is a metaphor for communities. In our case, communities that form on social media and move together in predictable patterns. And that's our company's mission, is to build and maintain these communities across a variety of verticals. That's our reason for being. And our secret sauce behind the scene is that we have original technology that breaks down and identifies the patterns that these communities form when they're consuming content on social media. One of our biggest categories is beauty. Some of you may know us from some of our beauty channels like Beauty Hacks, Beauty Studio, and Beauty Wow. And our offering to brands is a 1-2 punch. We work with performance-oriented brands. We offer the authority that comes from being introduced to a natural community of in this case, beauty enthusiasts. And then we use tech to target the followers who are most likely to engage with content and most likely to buy. So that's Jellysmack. And I'd love to start, Emily, with you talking a little bit about your journey, the journey that led to Cover FX. I know you've worked for some iconic and amazing companies like Estee Lauder and Keds, to name 2 super cool brands. So if you could maybe give us a little bit of your background and what led you to your current position as CEO of Cover FX Skincare.
Sure, I'd be happy to. The quick synopsis on me, I actually started my career the first 10 years I spent on the agency side. And I feel very fortunate for doing that because it really enabled me to learn every single channel from the ground up, whether it was print, TV, digital marketing, and just to date myself, this was when you could get a 99% click-through rate on a banner. And I actually explained to a client why I was so sorry I lost the 1%. So that should be a little humbling for some people. So anyway, where the agency part was phenomenal was it really taught me how to balance both the art and the science of overall 360 marketing, really from every single perspective. Feel very fortunate to work at amazing companies like Digitas, went through going public with them all the way to the end of my jaunt in the agency world at Ogilvy, working on iconic branding campaigns such as even Kodak, which was really a lot of fun. And then fast forwarding, as you mentioned, Rob, been fortunate enough to be in pioneering roles both at Estee Lauder, specifically working on Clinique, which is one of my favorite brands of all times. Specifically around their positioning around being allergy tested and fragrance free, and really one of the first derm brands out there that was accessible for a lot of different people. So worked there, and then also went into fashion at Rebecca Minkoff, and then up until recently was at KEDS, CMO there, and launched them into their centennial. And the thread leading up to Cover Effects is I am brought in to transform brands, really looking very closely at how to drive exponential business growth, upwards of 30% CAGR growth year over year, and think about how to dynamically reposition brands, look at their entire channel mix as it pertains to geo, but also points of distribution, and then position them to win with phenomenal teams. So couldn't have done any of this without amazing people working with me, achieve great success. And now I am at Cover Effects, which I adore. It is a vegan, cruelty-free brand that stands for inclusivity as it pertains to not only ethnicity, but also age and skin type. And so we are a brand that really celebrates each individual person and creates a high-performance, clean product that they can customize for themselves.
Terrific.
That's my quick snapshot, but I'm happy to dive into anything that sounds interesting.
Terrific. Well, you know, before we get into skincare and D2C and the world of social platforms and channel mixes and all of these things, I'd love to pick up on the conversation we had earlier about, you know, how you and all of us are managing this new normal, right? Right. We've had the storm in the Northeast that knocked out your video and a lot of the power for people all around both of us is just the latest example of 2020 being the year that keeps giving. And now we're also in the middle of a very, very hard to predict and very uneven, return to commerce and business and, working in offices and all of these things. So can you, you have a lot of people who report to you and a big job. Can you talk a little bit about how you've been navigating your way through this and maybe share some best practices and some ways you and your team have rolled with the punches, so to speak?
Sure, I definitely can. It is, there's so many different things that come to mind. I think, we were having a great conversation for anyone tuning in now. Rob and I were catching up before this. There's amazing things that you can do on technology. You name Zoom, Blue Jeans, we can all do 1,000 different virtual things. But there's something to be said about what I consider spontaneous interactions, meaning when you finish a meeting in person, then you have a great idea before another meeting, or you want to catch up with another coworker that maybe you didn't feel comfortable in that particular meeting or it hadn't dawned on you, but you have something you want to share and you grab a coffee. That is something you can't replicate easily in this all virtual world right now. So some of the ways I'm trying to, and I admit I have not fully mastered this. I do not think I'm alone on struggling to figure out how to do whiteboard sessions and have them be inspiring still and have the energy be pervasive or the spontaneous interactions. Some of the things I try and think about is, ensuring whether it's through town halls, it's communicating with your teams and the whole company for that matter. Maybe, in the past you hadn't had the opportunity to talk to everybody as much as COVID has enabled, but it's really making sure everyone in the company understands, what is strategically going on with the business. Where do we fall in the continuum of purpose? I really think purpose is a key part of strategy right now. And when you think about what's motivating people, when they're at home, why are they getting out of bed with the 6,000 things they have personally and professionally going on? Purpose is key to propelling that energy and unlocking it. Other things that I've found helpful, just off the top of my head, I'm an optimist realist. I, as much as humanly possible, try and work with people to think about, get a little space, take a little vacation, like a day off from every single device in your house, spend it outdoors or whatever you like doing with your plants, animals, or children, and get some perspective, because there is a horizon And as you, Rob, astutely mentioned already, between COVID, huge social movements that have been going on, storms taking out power, it's daunting. So how do you keep morale up, and how do you keep an open dialogue and keep people feeling nurtured and heard? So those are some of, I mean, it's really basic. It's over communicating, whether it's through emails, town halls, it's reminding people what is the horizon, what are we focused on, what are we excited by. And then the other piece I touch on too is celebrate the wins. I mean, getting a product out in this day and age, I mean, especially for us, we just launched 2 huge products. What we had to go through from a supply chain perspective, componentry in China, formulas in Italy, different parts in the US that are getting hit with COVID. None of us, any of us could have anticipated. So getting it out and in the consumer's hand is so well worth the celebration. So I think that's also key.
I think, that's awesome, Emily. I think that's a consistent thread that I've seen and heard from a lot of people too, is that companies and teams are kind of surprising themselves with what they're able to do in this environment. And things like product launches or pivots, which we did in our company, and other things that seem very daunting and impossible to do virtually, and they're actually happening. Our company, we've hired about 40 people since the pandemic started, and we've been onboarding them through Slack, which is a really interesting process, because you can't physically meet everybody, but you want to get their vibe, and you want to get a sense for their personality, and you want them, to your point, to be motivated and excited and feel like they're joining a community and a team. So we've kind of learned how to get people to share their favorite pop culture pursuits and personal things about them. And they do it in such incredibly creative ways that in some ways I think we get to know our new people faster and better than we would if they were suddenly working across the hall from us in an office.
I think that's totally true. I think one of the other 2 things, just on different parts of the business spectrum too, that I should have touched on is roles and responsibility. I think in particular in COVID times, because there are things that none of us realized were critical jobs, because pre-COVID needs to do certain things didn't exist. For example, procuring your own PPE equipment. One of our key distribution partners is Ulta. I can't say I thought that was a skill set I was going to round out. It is. So I think, and also making sure that you're clarifying within your team who's doing what. So even with the best intentions, people are allocating their resources or times in the best manner. So I think that's also really key, talking about accountability and responsibility as those continue to flux in this world right now. And then the last thing, just as a business leader, that does keep me up at night, and I think anyone heading a company, is making sure you have liquidity. Understanding that none of us know exactly what is going to unfold. I think good things are happening. I'm positive we'll find the vaccine, but you need to make sure that you have a strong handle, especially if you're privately held, on your 13-week cash flow and understanding exactly where your business stands.
Right. And do you use the word optimism or optimistic before?
Yeah.
Do you think there are things we're learning and practices we're developing that will translate well into the post-pandemic world, whatever that looks like?
I do. I mean, one of the things that I've been really passionate about in general, especially for people recently graduating, whether it's from undergraduate or the graduate world, is it's very hard to teach people how to come up with creative solutions with ambiguous data or input. And I would say one of the best things that COVID is helping to refine in many people at different phases in their career is you will never have perfect data or input. It's not humanly possible because we don't know what states or different countries are going to do from a policy perspective. Right. But it's with the limited data that you have, at which point can you articulate or create 2 to 3 viable solutions, share with your team refine them, and then, you know, as I like to say, embrace smart risk. There's no perfect answer, but you have to have the conviction to move forward and to find a solution, because not acting is worse than making a bad choice in my mind.
Right.
So that's a skill set I'm excited. And that's not taught in business school or undergraduate, in case study methodology, et cetera.
Yeah. Some things you can't learn in business school. That's for sure. So let's get a little closer to the world of direct to consumer marketing and to cover FX. And so,
sure.
And maybe talk a little bit about how you're thinking about the tools at your disposal and your changing media mix, right? We've seen a lot of things that were happening organically and naturally have been sped up. You know, there's that concept of the 5-year rule. Transformations that probably would have taken roughly 5 years are happening, you know, right away this year because of COVID. There's a huge burst of activity in e-commerce, social commerce, time spent online, time spent on social media platforms, all of these things. The transformation in other media categories seems to be also sped up, and it's in the news almost every week. I think Hearst announced last week they're not publishing Oprah's magazine in print anymore, right? Again, not a surprise.
I was shocked by.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I spent 25 years in the print world, and nothing shocks me at this point.
I understand, but I will say there were a few. I mean, especially with titles disappearing like sand at this point. But that one surprised me. But yes, please keep going.
Yeah, and so if you're a marketer and you're trying to reach consumers, you're trying to reach consumers of skincare products. You know, you're trying to reach
how do you do it?
A broad range of people. It's, you know, how do you do out of home when nobody's walking through Times Square? How do you do print when nobody's reading magazines? How do you rethink your digital strategy when 70% of millennials have ad blockers installed? And, you know, also, how do you think about the noise level on social feeds now? You know, the shopping experience on Instagram, just to use one example, you know, it's just hyper sped. We got a new puppy during quarantine, and the internet figured out.
You got a pandemic puppy.
We did. We got a pandemic puppy. His name is Louie. And the internet figured out immediately that we had a puppy, and I had no idea how many DTC dog care, dog training, dog food, dog products
there are a lot.
That were, you know, flowing just on Instagram alone. It's absolutely phenomenal. You know, it's almost like the paradox of choice. You have so many companies and products that are getting better and better at targeting you. You know, it's a challenge. Anyway, so could you, that's super broad setup there, but if you want to talk about the changing media mix and what you see, you know, working for you guys, and what's speeding up, and you know, what's working.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few things. I bring it back to, where is our consumer? He or she spending time. So if we start with that truth or insight, then we can figure out where to allocate our time and money, and also, you know, creative resources. So one of the areas we know, as you mentioned, is social media. Huge opportunity for us. We have on Instagram over 1.2 million followers. We've also dabbled with TikTok recently, which, by the way, is, we all know, strangely addictive. Some channels, as you mentioned before, some in social, such as Instagram, we participated in the beta for shopping, are interesting to see how consumers will convert there. But we're not actually in Instagram to convert to commerce per se. It's more actually to have a direct dialogue with our consumer. The most important thing to us around Instagram is sharing educational content, how to use our products, and actually getting insight and feedback from our consumers. It actually informs our product pipeline. So to me, a key way we engage with our consumers is social media. Another way that we do leverage the digital channels is our email database. Those are, as you know, people who have opted in, who are interested in your brand, who've raised their hand. that also gives us a great opportunity, whether it's in advance product releases or sharing more in-depth video content, etc. That's another way we can communicate with the consumer. I'm going to go old school for a minute. I think if any of us are being honest right now, depending on where you were, especially in the US, the amount that the Postal Service, UPS, or FedEx is driving around many of our neighborhoods or cities is mind-blowing. So for us, a key opportunity is actually sampling. So whether it's sampling in our own coverfx.com, of course, and you purchase from us, but also, as I said, one of our key partners is also Ulta and Amazon. So there's opportunities for us to sample with consumers to try our products. And we know most people are at home, not everyone, and I want to be very clear, very grateful for all the necessary workers and medical, et cetera, but many people are home. So we know there's an opportunity for trial there that we're really excited by. And then finally, we do know people are, as you said, maybe not picking up print, no disrespect to print as much, but they are on blogs, whether it's Refinery 29, The Real, the Zoe Report or something like that. So we know it also makes sense for us to have a rapport with not only influencers, but also editors. So as you know how that works, it's us sending them products. There's no payment whatsoever, except for, I guess you could consider sending products, but we don't know what the review will be or if they review us. And we found that to be very effective as well, too.
Right. So, so many questions. Well, first, let's talk about TikTok a little bit more. The strangely addictive, wonderfully controversial in the news TikTok.
Oh, indeed.
What do you think's gonna happen? Is Microsoft gonna buy them? Are they becoming more a part of your thinking and your marketing mix? And tell us more about your TikTok opinion.
Yeah, TikTok for us. Well, first answering. I admit I have not read the news this morning since I have no access to it, but I do believe there will be some type of deal struck between the president of Microsoft or CEO of Microsoft and the president of the country on TikTok. I do think that will go through. And I actually think in many ways it would be healthy for Microsoft to be back into the mix and possibly change up the dynamics between some of the monopolistic players in social media right now. So I'm in favor of that. In terms of TikTok for us, our consumer is not quite probably the demographic of TikTok, but we have a few consumers on there. So that's
because
why,
she's not that young.
It's probably not that young exactly, but we had some of our consumers share with us on Instagram, hey, you should check out TikTok. Again, going back to where it's an amazing lab. We're like, why not? If you're suggesting it, you're there. Let's launch TikTok. So it is not going to be our primary focal point in any way, shape, or form, but we know some of our consumers are there and we want to make sure that we're engaging with them. And it's one of those things that, we'll closely monitor, similar to many other social media platforms as they've ebbed and flowed over time. Yeah. So many fascinating things about TikTok, like the speed at which consumers and brands are learning and creators on the platform. It's so dynamic. It's so fun.
What happening? I mean, we launched Husei, my previous company, which in the influencer marketing space, in 2010, and so we it was pre-Instagram, and we had a front row seat to see how long it took to learn each new platform and to practices and get it into a groove. And with TikTok, it's happening at lightning speed. And
it's amazing.
And I love their rolling out their business platform, and their slogan is "Don't make ads, make TikToks," which
I think that's what's refreshing. And I have to say, I think we're, from a cultural perspective right now, where everyone loves it, for the most part, it's a happy place.
Yeah.
People are not going there espousing political or personal views. It's a few nanoseconds of something usually pretty amusing. And if it's not amusing, it's only nanoseconds of engagement, but it's like a happy little utopia right now. I hope it stays that way.
It really is a comedy platform in many ways.
Indeed. But that's why I think that's why at this particular cultural moment, people are seeking, I just want 5 minutes of happiness or entertainment.
Right. So let's talk, you mentioned monopolistic large social platforms. Let's talk about Facebook for a minute.
Sure.
Obviously Facebook has been in the news in many ways in the last couple of years.
Indeed.
Privacy issues, content issues, and the boycott this year.
Data.
It's
data. Yes, many different things.
Yes, and we know at Jellysmack from working with a lot of DTC brands, Facebook is huge. It's incredibly important to a lot of brands and a lot of marketers, and it's one of the most powerful things on the planet. So can you talk a little bit more about how you're thinking about Facebook these days?
Yeah, for me, it's quite a conundrum. And what I mean by that is going back to thinking about all the different media channels that any brand has in their arsenal. One of the most important ones is you're looking for reach. And in the day, that might have been print or TV. I would say at this point, it is probably not as much, although reach is pretty phenomenal on top shows, et cetera. The reach on Facebook and the digital platforms is pretty unrivaled, so that makes it very, very attractive for most of us. I think where the conundrum part comes for me is, and I would say putting on my consumer hat, is there have been a number of different choices the platform has made as it pertains to PII compliance and data that can definitely impact our country and individuals, that doesn't feel terribly responsible, and maybe not something as a brand that you want to endorse and continue to help thrive and grow. So that's where, we did join the boycott in July, and we're trying to navigate a very challenging situation like many other brands.
Yep. So any other thoughts on platforms that you've begun to look into outside of, if we'd say the big 5 or 6 is, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, other platforms that work for you guys, like Pinterest or Reddit or the podcast space?
Yeah, our consumer, frankly, Pinterest is fascinating, have the utmost respect for that platform. That's just not typically where our consumer spends a ton of time, or they don't for beauty. It's more, it's high sensorial. You want to see an application. It's not so much like a mood board. So I wouldn't say that platform is optimal for us. The other platforms that are off the charts right now, whether it's WhatsApp to LinkedIn, again, we know there are a lot of consumers thinking about where are consumers. It just doesn't lend itself to engaging with our brand as much. So that's why we are very heavily focused on Instagram. And as I said, we're active in Facebook. We have a pro community there that we launched a few weeks ago that's really active and fun. But we're focused on the big ones right now. And, always keeping our eye open on other ones as well. Yep.
So can we drill down a little bit on influencer marketing and creator marketing and how you view that space? I know from personal experience, it seems like the influencer marketing space is counted out on a regular basis, and people are usually wrong. Those articles start appearing in the early days when there were a few FTC compliance violations, and some brands got in trouble. In part probably just ignorance of how to use the platform and how to comply with these emerging FTC regulations. Then you had these cultural moments like the Fire Festival, where another batch of articles came out and said influencer marketing has jumped the shark. It happened a little bit at the beginning of the pandemic when some of the influencers and creators, like Something Navy, posted stuff that was tone deaf about, we're all in this together. If you're if your description of being in this is having a house in the Hamptons you can go off to with your, your nanny and your maid, and that was, that caused a whole relatability crisis for, for her. So, if influencer, maybe I'll use a sports metaphor, if influencer marketing and all its promise was a baseball game, what inning do you think it would be in?
Oh, all right. I'm not going to lie. Baseball is not my sport, but I'm going to go with this question. I do understand baseball.
There are 9 innings in a
I know
baseball.
what you're saying.
Right.
I know that.
Okay.
My son does play. I'm just by like the 6th inning. I'm like, are we wrapping up? Can we call a rain situation yet?
Right.
So
we're in the 7th inning stretch
I
of influencer marketing.
Yeah, like let's just end this thing. That's why I like that he's picked lacrosse now. I won't lie.
Right.
In terms of baseball, I'm not sure. Let me tell you my thoughts. I feel like we're at the 8th inning, but the question is, what does the win or the loss look like? For me, why I answered it that way is because I think that's really, important to give context around my answer. Is I really do what you said before in Something Navy and many other what I would consider mega influencers, like at the macro level with millions of followers. I do think, and I've sensed this for about the past 2+ years, but I think COVID has without question accelerated it. That mega influencer who every 2 seconds is oscillating between the hair product, the yogurt, the vitamin they took, the chew toy their dog used, or the diaper that their daughter is crawling perfectly by in a manicured lawn in the background. Every part of their ethos has been, it feels like, almost sold. And none of it feels remotely authentic because there's no DNA or strand to these brands. It's just you get a sense whoever paid the most, they will be the face of that brand for that moment. I think people are really exhausted by that. So to me, what I'm excited about is I feel like the idea of let's not just pay for someone who has 30 million Instagram influencers. One could argue, does any one of those followers even care who this person is, except for they feel socially they should follow them? We're going back to like nano or micro influencers. I mean, that's what we're doing as a brand more so. And what I'm excited about is, whether it's me, my head of content, or my head of social, we personally know these people. We actually know what their skin is. We know, as a matter of fact, when we just launched this pre-in probiotic limited tinted moisturizer, we know which ones of them are going to be over the moon to try it. No pressure for them to do any content around it, but we're excited to work with them and share it with them because they're friends of the brand and ours. And to me, that's far more fulfilling than dealing with 50 agents and shipping a product and someone saying, I like this product, it's amazing, try it.
Right.
But there's no passion.
And there are challenges with micro influencers, right? You need to sort of
challenges with everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Can be.
Yeah.
It can
the
be
challenge.
like cats.
Yeah. To your point, I'm sorry to interject. I get so passionate on this. The challenges with micro, is going back to what we talked about before, is reach. You need a number of them. I think the part to me that I've been focused on is I look at their engagement. So maybe their reach isn't as high as a macro, but guess what? They have a heavily high engagement rate, which frankly is far more valuable to me and the brand.
Do you put any parameters on the definition of a micro influencer or a nano influencer, like in terms of a minimum number of followers, or do you just look at the authenticity of their content and the level of fan engagement?
To your point, it's a little bit of art and science for us. We tend to, yes, I do have metrics, usually where they tend to, there's patterns. After X number of followers, people start to cross into a different level of engagement, how they want to work with brands. And unfortunately, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times that also does correlate to authenticity.
Right.
So, one thing I do want to clarify, we do work with some great macro ones, but frankly, most of those macro ones we started with when they were micro. We have a rapport with them, and we're so excited that they continue to grow and thrive. And of course, we'll keep working with them, but we don't usually start with them at that point.
Got it. So can we shift a little bit to
Sure.
Cover FX and the clean beauty
Yeah.
product space and talk about that? What are so super exciting space, right? But both there are
I think so.
there are large mainstream brands that are have known for quite some time that safe ingredients, natural ingredients, a purpose-driven approach to this category is becoming more and more meaningful to consumers, and consumers are smarter and more knowledgeable and leaning into that more. And obviously an explosion of new brands and indie beauty brands and so forth. So when you're talking, I guess I'd start by asking you, when you're talking to this customer in particular, to whom these things are important, what are the cardinal rules of of credibility and authenticity?
I mean, I think it's like we're so fortunate. Our consumer genuinely cares about clean beauty. Now, where I want to pause is I feel like saying the word clean beauty right now is similar to saying organic food like 15 years ago. If you can remember that, when nobody knew what that meant. You use good pesticides, bad pesticides, but everyone all of a sudden became organic, but they're different shades of that. Yeah. I think one of the most important things for us, going back to clean beauty and how we use it, is being really transparent with our consumers, because there is no universal standard in the US right now. That's why even if you go to one partner, shop at one store to another one, and I mean huge retailers, they have different definitions because it's not being governed. So what we can do for the consumer is be super honest with them, and that's why on our website we say, here's what ingredients. As I mentioned before, we have a ton of scientific ingredients that are really good for you around the microbiome, around really fabulous naturally sourced ingredients. We also purposely make sure, by the way, there are a lot of great natural ingredients that you don't want in your skincare products. For example, poison ivy is a natural ingredient. You don't want that in your beauty product. So we explain to the consumer on our site and on our packaging what we don't have as much as what we do have. And I think that's really important. So we empower them to make the choices that are important to them.
I'm just wondering if there's a poison ivy opportunity for
I personally am going to avoid. Yes, no, indeed not. Like itch cream, like there's nothing that could be positive out of that. But my point in bringing out that really crazy example is a lot of times people think if it's natural ingredients, it must be good for you. That correlation, similar to cinnamon, is a natural ingredient. It's also a very known irritant. Right. So that's where we need to make sure our consumer, and especially so many of them at this point a lot of people have sensitive skin. In fact, 90% of consumers identify that they have sensitive skin. And there are a lot of people right now who have allergies. So that's why we make sure that we're really clear with what we do have and what we don't have in our products.
Yeah, so much more of an approach of individuality and seeing each consumer for who she is and her unique preferences and needs and technology to enable it. I think I see Casey on the screen. I think we are ready to wrap up. Is that?
Yeah, we're into time. Yeah, Emily, I know you can't see me, but I am back. Yeah, we're wrapped.
I'm so sorry, Casey. You could drive by me if you want, or jump out of a tree, and I would see you that way.
Well, thank you so much for.
That's a visual for everyone.
Yes.
I'm actually on the tree, in the tree above you right now. You can't look up.
That's spectacular. And by the way, that would round out my day. I would love it.
Right.
Hey, Emily, one thing that you said that I think it just summarizes, I mean, we talk about this with our team a lot, not acting being worse than not doing anything at all. I think is just like a huge takeaway from what we've been going through this year, and really pretty much translates to all industries. But it's totally a time where, we've seen some partners have, a lot more inaction and not know what to do, and really it limits learnings. And right now is a time for accelerated learnings and an opportunity where no one's executing exactly according to plan. So as those plans are changing, getting out and doing stuff. So it's really cool to hear that that's how you're leading. And I did want to ask Rob one question before we move on. I just couldn't let this go. What kind of puppy did you get?
Dachshund, male dachshund named Louie.
I was going to
Nice.
go with a doodle. I was going to guess a doodle something.
Yeah, Rob, you do seem like a doodle kind of guy, but
Yeah, well, thank you. Best thing we could have done, by the way. He kept us all sane the last 4 months and amused and distracted when we needed it most.
that's amazing. Well, again, I'm glad you acted in that case too, and we actually got a pandemic puppy as well. So maybe one.
Ooh, what'd you get, Casey?
We got a mutt. She was actually she was bought by UC Davis. She was a frat dog for a week, and the frat decided they were not equipped to have a puppy, so gave her to a shelter where we got her.
Fantastic.
I love it. I'm trying to get a shelter dog. I have 2/3 of my family on board. I have one more third this way.
Nice. Hopefully you do, Emily, and then maybe one of these days when post-vaccine, me, you, and Rob can get our dogs together. Maybe probably dogs, not puppies. By
Puppy
that point.
party.
Puppy party.
Excellent.
Dog
Awesome.
play date for sure.
Emily and Rob, I know we'll be hearing